Hey everybody, it's Rory from A&S Gear, and today we're going to learn how to do some general maintenance on your paintball markers. Okay, so we're looking at a Proton from Valken today. We've had some requests to pull one of these apart and kind of go through it, show you all the parts on the inside. So we've got one here, we'll take it apart and we'll look at it. Let's get the barrel off. Put that off to the side, and let's go ahead and just break it down into its pieces, and we'll kind of look at all the pieces individually. Now the Proton does have its regulator built into the grip, kind of like the code, like a CS1. Alright, so opening this up and looking at it, you can see that there's a Rayovac battery in here. I've never had any luck with these batteries. I'm a firm believer in quality battery for quality performance, so make sure you're getting a Duracell Energizer. Now I'm not saying this is a bad battery, I don't know anything about it, but never had luck with anything non-name brand in the past, so just food for thought. All right, so let's get this separated off. Let's just start breaking this down from up here. It's smaller than that. So that takes care of everything in there. That's our solenoid wire going from there. So this wire coming through here is our solenoid wire coming to this solenoid right here. Let's go ahead and break this down. So this front cover will expose our board. And the setup on this is kind of similar to like a Mini or an Axe, where you have this front board assembly in the grip, and the battery is in the gun grip, not the front grip. The interface between these is right here, so there's two buttons. You can see them right there, and then the button interface is on the back side right here. And these are all your lights that show you what the gun is doing, and that's these little LEDs that are on here. You have some jumpers on here. I don't remember if the jumpers are meant to be switched or not, or if all the programming is done through the board. I don't remember. You have to look in the manual for that one. Let's get this off. One thing to remember about doing this setup or taking this apart is this middle grip screw, or this grip screw in here, you want to make sure you get this out before you try to take this back screw out. This screw is recessed inside. It does not actually come out through here. So if you start to unscrew this one without taking this one out, it's going to want to bend your frame up, and you could possibly do some damage to your frame. So just be careful. Oh, I forgot about that. So I said earlier that this wire right here runs up to the solenoid. It actually does not run up to the solenoid. I was wrong. It goes and connects to the main board up here. And the main board is going to control the solenoid. So if we pull this apart, you can actually see that that wire runs up to the board up there. So I'm going to disconnect this from the board, and that way it can be separate over here. So So that's our components right here. We'll look at we looked at the grip. I mean, the grip is pretty straightforward. This slides into there, connects to the main board right up there, just like a mini or an axe would do, or a lot of other guns, I should say. Shouldn't single it out to that. On this, our frame, we have a pull right here. This is our on and off right here. So when we pull this back and push it forward, it actually pushes against a switch that's inside of here, right here. So you can see that there is a little micro switch right here. When we push this forward or pull it back, it compresses this little switch and turns the gun on or off. Now there's another micro switch right there, and this is our trigger switch. So when we pull the trigger, like that, it rocks against that switch. That's what activates everything inside of there. So that's what this is for, right there. If you're wondering what this little pull button is for, there you go. All right, so we've got our trigger back here. Running down to the bottom, this is our ASA and regulator down here. Let's see if this unscrews. No, it does not. So you'd want to, if you're going to remove this off all the way, you're going to have to pull these screws out and slide it off. So let's do that real quick. Let's make sure that we have a nice large table when we're doing this too, so that nothing gets lost inside of here. We've got 2 screws that are going to come in from the side right here. So they come in through these 2 little holes right there and right there. And you can see that they're tapered funny at the front. When they go in, they actually push on 2 pieces, and they cause them to push down. So this screw comes in, rides against this screw, pushes it down, and that's what locks the ASA in place and keeps it from sliding around inside there. There's a gasket right here. You can see it sitting right there. So if you ever get a leak from this area down here, check this seal right here and make sure that the seal is good. All right. So next would be our regulator. Our regulator sits right inside of here. Now I might not be able to get this out. Let's just see what kind of tools I've got up here. Let's see if I have anything that will fit this properly without damaging or scratching anything. Okay, there we go. So I'm just unscrewing this front block off of here. You're probably better off using a socket for this. There's an Allen key slot right here. Okay, but that's for your regulator adjustment. That's not actually to remove the regulator out. That is so that you can increase or decrease velocity. All right, so there's that. Grab a whole piston assembly out of here. So here's our piston, our spring, and then our adjustment section with our reg seat inside of there. So if you needed to get the reg seat out or the adjuster out, there's a little C-clip right here, spring clip, that you would need to remove. You undo this one and pull it out. Maybe I can get that out of here with this one. Put these pieces down here. Now these things, when they pop off of the tool, they will fly everywhere. And this is actually the wrong tool for this, because what you actually want is a pair like that, so that you can actually pull it all apart and get it out of there. Now, it doesn't look like I have a small enough one up here right now to actually get the snap ring out. These are too wide, and the pins are too they're too big to get inside of there. So, whatever you need to do, I'm going to try it one more time with this one. Again, this is not a snap ring plier or spring clip or C-clip. Call them so many different things here. Hey, there we go. Popped out of there finally. That's what it looks like. So for this, what we would do is bring it out through the top here. And so this is our adjuster. This has our reg seat in the bottom of it right there. So this piston, when it comes together, it pushes against that seat, and that's what seals the regulator right there. So if you ever get a regulator that is supercharging or is not regulating properly, check this seat, this yellow seat inside of here, and make sure that it is free of debris, it's not cracked, that it has a good sealing surface to it. Now, if you have other issues with your regulator, check your O-rings. If you have a leak from the front of the regulator, check that O-ring that we just slid back in there, right there. If you have a leak from the inside of the regulator, which on this one is kind of hard to see, but you would get a leak through this hole right here on the side. You want to check this O-ring on the piston right here. And if you're having velocity issues also, and the reg seat seems fine, check this O-ring that's on the inside in here as well. All right. Let's try to get this ring back in here. This could be tricky. I'll try to keep my finger over it so that it doesn't get lost. There we go. Much easier going in. All right, so let's put our regulator back together. And our ASA back together too. The takedown on these is really quite simple. Seems like there's a lot of parts going on, but it's a pretty easy do. Get that snug. Now these, we want to make sure that these are set properly inside of there. So I'm going to put in, which one is it? Must be this one. I'm going to put in my adjustment pieces first. Like this. And then I'm going to drop these pieces in the top. Like that. So I know that they need to sit under flush. And you can see as I turn this in, see how they come out? If I turn it back, I can push it back in there. If I have these sitting above flush and I try to slide this thing on here, it's going to not go on. So we'll go right about to there. Then we'll tighten this down. All right. That's pretty simple right there. We have a little jumper board right here. You can see that board. Basically, it's just for our battery, so it runs the power from the battery through the wire and then up to the upper board. All right, let's talk about our bolt. Break the bolt down. That's got to come off of there. I don't know if I'll be able to get that by hand or not. Doesn't look like I will be. So let's go ahead and see if we can separate this one here. Might not want to. put just a little bit of pressure on this and try to do this. There we go. You never want to overdo it. The pieces, especially aluminum pieces, things like that, you can scratch them and mark them, cause all sorts of problems. All right. Now it looks like on this one that this actually unscrews from here also. It's been a while since I pulled one of these bolts apart. And I might not be able to get a hold of this. There is a little slot, or not a slot, like a socket slot on the end, on the inside here, where you could put something in there to hold it so that you could rotate this as well. Because looking at this backside, the only way to actually get this off, so this piece and this can off of here, would be to separate this piece from here. And getting that little socket in there to go. No, I don't have that size socket up here. No, I don't. So if you did need to remove this, if you needed to change out this O-ring right here, which can cause a leak down the barrel, you'd want to separate this from this. So separating this piece from this piece so that you could actually get this can assembly off. Or if you needed to slide this off as well, because this does have an O-ring, it looks like, on the inside. Or it might just have this rubber. No, it's definitely got an O-ring in there. If you need to just separate those out as well, they would have to come off the front right there. It does not look like this piece and this piece are meant to be broken apart. So to get that off of there, you want to hook onto this and rotate off there. I just can't. This is super greasy on the front. Maybe see if I can grab a towel here. If I can hold it with the towel. If not, you get what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's not coming over there. Not by hand, at least. All right, so that's that section at the back. Now we've got this right here, which just has O-ring, 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 O-ring. So if you have any issues with just bolt leak or leaking around the bolt, not down the face of the bolt, obviously you would check that O-ring there, and you can check these ones back here if you get a leak from the rear. Pretty basic bolt setup. Nothing too fancy. Just be careful when you're taking this apart. The metal it's aluminum and it is soft. So just be careful. Snug it down just a little bit. And there we go. Bolt. And then let's look at the body. So there's not much to the body really. We've pulled everything out of the inside, so there's nothing left in there. Let's see right there. We have our solenoid assembly right here. And this is the same kind of solenoid assembly. Well, I'm using a very general term when I say that. The same solenoid assembly that you would see in like a Spider or something like that. It's just a electronically activated solenoid. It's not a pneumatic solenoid where air is sliding a spool back and forth. We are driving this thing forward with a current to get it to cycle. So let's pop this thing off here. We'll look at it. First things first, let's unplug this connector ribbon right here. You have to be very careful with these connector ribbons. They easily crimp and bend, and if you were to put a good crimp in it, the metal wire that actually runs on the inside of the ribbon will break, and then it just doesn't work anymore. So be careful with those. if you do get a leak between frame and gun, so where these two kind of join up inside of here, boop, the transfer, so air is going to come in into this ASA, go through the regulator, come up through the frame, and come out of that hole that you see in the, down in there, on my finger, yeah, down in there, and it transfers into the solenoid back here. So this gasket that runs around the outside, check that if you're getting some leaking issues through there. All right, so we pulled these two screws out. These ones need to come out first, and they are set in this direction, like that. You can see the other one on that side. It goes right in there. Okay. And then the two can come out from this side. Now we should be able to lift it right up. All right. So here's our coil. And this just controls our airflow through here. So this activates, it is keyed. Cool. So this only goes on in a certain way. These are keyed so that this piece has to fit on here in a certain orientation. You can't just willy-nilly put this back on and have it fit. You definitely need to find the right spot where it drops in. If you try it through some of the other holes, it won't fit. But that way it does. So at least it lines up right. So here's our air. This is our air input on this side, and this is our air output on this side. And depending on where this spool right here sits, it controls airflow by moving back and forth inside there. Now that spool is controlled by this electromagnet over here. So when this pushes or turns on or off, it creates this to move back and forth, and it makes it seal up. Or, well, it always seals up, but it makes it change positions and direct airflow through the solenoid. Pretty snazzy. Pretty cool. Interesting little setup on there. All right. So you shouldn't have too many problems with your solenoid. I haven't seen many solenoid issues with this gun so far. So let's get the solenoid back together and go from there. Make sure we key this properly first. There we go. And then we are going to, I think I have to do it, you got to put it back the same way you took it off of there, in the same order. So I'll have to set this on here first. And line these up on here. But what we need to have happen is this micro switch needs to be in position for the trigger to activate. So this is going to sit this way with our switch over here so that the trigger can push on it right here. This has got to run down to this connector here, but these three holes need to line up with these holes right here. So this needs to be that way. Oh. There we go. Just like that. And then you've got two screws here. You've got long ones and short ones. The long ones are going to come in through the top and hold the assembly in place. Then the short ones come in from the side, and make sure that the spool assembly and the solenoid assembly are together and don't come apart. But you do have to do them in that order. Otherwise, there's no room for the screw to get by. Or it could have just been that this was loose. Let me see here. Yeah, it was. From the box, out of the box, I'll show you. The screw that holds the spool assembly portion to the solenoid portion was loose, and it would not let the locking screw come up and get past it. So you don't actually need to do it the way I did it. You can remove these two if the other two screws are tight the way they should be, and pull the whole assembly out. The way this one was set up, or the way I opened it up, you couldn't do that, just because that screw was loose. So if we tried to gas this gun up from factory right there, it would have leaked, because these two pieces would not solid together. Well, it might not have leaked. It might have been that they were just far enough apart to still seal, but they probably would have eventually leaked. And let's connect our cable. Now this, you want to be careful with. We don't want to bend or crimp this piece by pushing like this. We got to push this wire into this block right here. And it's a ribbon, so it's thin. And we don't want to push so hard that it like bends over and crimps itself. So you want to grab it as close to the front as possible and try to slide it in there. If we can't get it to go together, we can always pull the whole board out and then connect it that way, which we might have to do because we're going to pull this out anyway. And we're going to pull the eyes out. The eyes will be our last little stop here on this journey. Need a smaller Allen key. We're going to get our covers off. There's our eye cover. Underneath there is our detent and our spring. So that just kind of sits on there. Pushes. Wing, 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 wing. Let's take our board out. So this has got a washer and like a little grommet just to protect the board from the screw. You can see that right there. Now let's get this thing out of here. I always look around these before I just start pulling to make sure that nothing is going to break or crack as I'm trying to pull this out of here. And look at this side. Maybe we have to push down from here. Yeah. So I'm actually pushing on the window on the inside for the eye. Woo! There it goes. All right, so this will look very similar to a mini board and actually an axe board too, where it's got your two eye pieces right there and they stick up inside of there. And it looks like they have two pieces. Let's see if these will pop out as well. They do. There's a little acrylic piece that the eye is going to actually sit in, and kind of makes a little holder for it. So here's our actual eye, and then this is the piece that the eye goes into. This is going to sit. See if you can see it like that. So this sits right there. There's two slots right there where the eyes are going to pass up into. It's going to go just like that. You can see that that little cover goes on there. And this actually will center the eye. It'll make it fit exactly where they want it to be so that it detects properly back and forth. And it'll also protect the eye from being covered in paint. If you do break a ball inside of there, just this acrylic housing is going to be covered in paint, not the eye itself. So I have seen mini board and axe boards where they don't use any kind of cover. It's just the eye inside the breech looking at the paintballs. And if you don't clean them well, these will rust, they will deteriorate, and they'll stop working just from being covered in paint all the time. So this little housing that they use for it is actually quite handy to keep everything working and in proper order. Let's put it back in. They just slide down in there like that. Put our eyes back in. I'm going to do what we talked about though, is I'm going to connect this wire before I put it all together. That way I know I'm not going to crimp this wire at all. I can grab it right at the front and I can push it in so I know I haven't bent it at all. It's a better way to do it. Then we can slide our board back down in. Take our screw that had the metal and probably either Delrin or plastic washer. Attach that. Snug it up. All right, everything looks good with that. So let's put our eye covers back on. Just drop the actual detent back in, put the spring in the housing, and then put this on. I don't think that these are sighted. I think we can get away with just putting one wherever, which is smart. That way you can just make one style and you don't have to make a left and a right version. You can just make a cover and it can be replaced by either one. There we go. That's all back together now. Let's do our frame. First thing we want to do before we put our frame on is we're going to connect our wire, but we also have to set up for the screws to go in. So we've got one screw that we know goes up to that one. Then we've got these two screws back here. The one that's got a flat head to it, that one right there, is the one that's going to sit inside of here. Possibly. Nope. Had it wrong. The flat one, I guess if I should have probably looked at the frame. This frame's got a nice wide buttonhole in the top of it so that that flat head screw can fit in there right. I figured since it was flat, it needed to be flat to fit in there, but it doesn't. So this button head version will just drop right inside there like that. And then we're going to put this up here. We're going to connect those first. So connect our wire. And if you're not comfortable with kind of working with two pieces at the same time and connecting a wire, you could do this. Disassemble this. So unplug the wire from the main board or the battery board. Connect it in here. And we'll go to put this back together. We just need to feed this through the proper way. There's a little pass through right here. and that wire is going to run through that hole. So we just want to make sure that it goes through there. So I'm going to put that in first so that my wire pokes through. Then I'm going to put my screw in. I'm going to slide everything together, make sure that this wire gets out of the way. And you see that it will not touch. It won't be flush with the body because that screw actually needs to drop down in before the body will go flush. Then we can take this middle screw and put it in. So that it actually goes down straight first. And what did we catch? See, we want to be careful. The trigger pushes up against the micro switch, but also that wire passes through there also. So it is possible to catch that wire and get it caught on the switch inside there. So when you pull the trigger, it doesn't actually activate the switch. It's pushing against this wire that's running through there. So make sure that doesn't get in the way. You should be able to pull the trigger and hear the clicking of the switch inside of there and know that everything's good. If it doesn't, then pull the frame back off and check it out and see why. All right, so let's put this in here. All right, now we're going to put our board and our foregrip back on. Actually, we'll do our bolt first, seeing so it's just sitting right here. Make sure that's all screwed together. There we go. What I do with this one is I do the board first. So I actually take the board and I will plug it in before I slide this up in there. Now you want to make sure that you have the board plugged in the proper way, like this or like this. And to know for sure, you should look for the holes or the buttons. The buttons face backwards because that's where you'll be pushing on them right there. So we want the buttons to be facing back on the gun. I'm going to go ahead and plug that in there. We're actually on because I had pushed this forward. So let's make sure that all my pins are in. We don't want to half connect this, which is possible. I can do this. And now I've only got half of my pins in there. I've got them offset so that only 4 pins out of the 8 are actually those are 5 pins. So 5 out of the 10 are in. We want to make sure it shifts over and actually locks in properly right there. And then we can put this in, and this uses the same kind of screw setup. So this little button head drops in first, and then we can just slide this right up, line up that screw, and go ahead and tighten this down. This will be really hard to line up if you tried to put the board in the grip and then slide it up in there and line everything up. It's going to be a pain to try to do right there. So last but not least is our grips. And these have pretty thick rubber grips on them. So with any kind of grip setup that has a really thick grip on it, I always take my screws and I just put them in enough to where it holds the screw in place. This will make it easier for me to wrap the grip around and actually get the holes to line up. If you tighten this down right now and keep this grip from moving, when you flip it over to the other side, it's going to be really hard to get those holes in the right spot. So if you keep this loose for now, push it around, it's much easier. It gives you more room, more slack to line that screw up with the other side. Put it down. Put it down, and then you can go ahead and just tighten them down the rest of the way. Now that's not for all grips, just these like wrap around rubber grips like this. Really helps, especially on the minis and axes. All right, so there we go. There's our Proton all back together, ready to go. Well guys, I hope this helps you out with any questions or concerns you have about your paintball gear or products. And as always, for all your paintball needs, shop ansgear.com.